rolling. We've got about 15 seconds, and I'll give you a count in, okay?
The 2016 legislative session may have only been 35 days long, but wow, what tremendous impact and effect and cost to all Oregonians. It's just amazing. Welcome to People, Places, and Politics. I'm Patty Milne. My guest today, Nick Williams, the Director of Public Affairs at our local Salem Chamber of Commerce. And I know some of these issues that happened, the direction some of these issues took at this last legislative session, you were following very, very closely right here in Salem at the Chamber, as were many other people. So I'd like to touch on that, the increase in the minimum wage. Also, let's talk a little bit about IP 28. Also, some of the things happening right here in Salem, city council races and such. So Nick, why don't you just go ahead where you'd like to start, or maybe if you'd start on that minimum wage, and then we'll move on to some other.
Yeah, you got it. Well, thanks for having me in today, Patty. It's always great to spend some time with you on the show here. During the legislative session, we were deeply engaged in the goings-on there as a local chamber of commerce, and it was interesting because very seldom are there, there can be hundreds, or during a long session, thousands of bills.
Yes.
but very few of those pass our organizational litmus test as far as what we get involved in and what we don't. And that litmus test is, how will this in this case bill, or we also ask it for candidates and measures and so forth, but how will this bill impact our local economy's ability to either attract or at least maintain jobs? And it became very evident in mid-January up until February 1st, 2nd, when the session started, that job number one for us was going to be to engage at a very high level on the minimum wage issue. And for us, what engagement looks like is we have a lot of members, a lot of folks in business locally that are passionate. They're passionate about growth of their business and being able to pay people and pay the people that they love, that they employ more and more over time. And as we started to take a look further and further into the minimum wage bill as it was presented, this particular piece of legislation had an absolutely negative effect on our local economy's ability to either maintain or create jobs. So that, I would say, that bill was the focal point for our legislative efforts. And as it was for a lot of other chambers around the state, and the Oregon State Chamber and Associated Oregon Industries, there were very few, if any, business groups that were in favor of that piece of legislation.
Right.
And it puts Oregon as the highest minimum wage provider. And if you talk to folks, or the highest base minimum wage state, and if you talk to folks that are in the economic development industry, so they basically they go around the country, and in Oregon we try to attract other businesses, other significant traded sector employers to Oregon, and that's nearly impossible for them to do right now.
It's going to be very difficult, and I know for myself, looking at it and trying to understand the impact everywhere. And there isn't anyone who wouldn't like to make more money and be able to go up that economic ladder, and we all want that, especially if we're an employer and if we're a small business owner. We want to have people employed who are good people, and we want to take care of them. However, when there's this artificial what I would call an artificial um, imposition into the business world and into the economy, it's going to just be havoc for so many people. So I know everywhere I go and business owners I'm talking to, and I said, well, what do you think? People are really, it's as though they were hit up the side of the head, or a bucket of cold water was thrown over them. Unfortunately, a lot of people I'm talking to are saying any idea that they had of expanding their business is just not going to happen, at least at any time in the near future. And businesses who luckily are at the threshold of having fewer than 10 employees, even they are still very, very worried about the impact it'll have on them. So.
Well, even people that don't employ people. My mom is a retired school teacher, for example, and she and I talk a lot about what it is that I do professionally, and she she became very, very passionate about this issue. Retired school teacher, with her pension and the way that it's set up, it's pretty well locked in.
Yes.
And as a result of that, her income is fixed. And we have a lot of people in Oregon whose incomes are fixed. And even if a business is already paying over minimum wage, a lot of the goods and services that they need in order for their business to get by day to day, a lot of those peripheral providers, their labor costs are going to go up, meaning that their costs are going to go up, and those are so absolutely everybody is going to be impacted.
Everybody. It's a real domino effect that this has, and as you're pointing out, employers may not technically have people at minimum wage, but they may have some lower income people. It's going to affect everybody in their organization. And even those who don't have employees, it will have a dramatic effect. A discussion I've had recently with some folks trying to explain this impact is even if you don't have an employee, but you're doing business at some location, whether you rent the facility or own the facility, oh gosh, we need fresh paint. Oh, guess what? It's going to cost more to have this building painted. The furnace goes out. Oh my goodness, it's going to cost more to have the furnace fixed because all of these people, the employers of these people providing maintenance, repair work, have had to raise their wages as well, and then it affects the benefit package, and some employers are going to have a difficult time. I have to increase the hourly wage. I don't have the flexibility in our earnings to also give them an increase in benefits. And then speaking of that, not only if the minimum wage goes up or the hourly wage goes up, then your unemployment as an employer, the expense for the unemployment insurance ratchets up. So it's going to be, it's going to play out, and I'm very concerned it's going to have extreme negative effects on everybody throughout the state.
Yeah, it will, and that puts, I guess, for a lot of different reasons. I'm a silver lining person, and I think that as an organization we're always looking for the bright side of something. And so as soon as it was passed and signed by the governor, we immediately went into the mode of, okay, well, so what does this mean for Salem? What can we do as a community to not raise the bottom, but kind of move the needle forward for everybody. And where our focus, where our emphasis is now is in May, we have 4 seats that are up for our Salem City Council. Out of 8, 4 of them are up for election this go around. Of those 4, 3 are contested races, and we only have, of those three, only one is an incumbent. And then we have one incumbent, Brad Nanke, Councillor Nanke, who's not opposed. Salem is in a very good place. When you take a look at when you take a look around our community and you just go through a drive through Salem, a good kind of eyeball test economic indicator is what do the buildings look like, and what is the transportation system like, all of these different things. And because voters in Salem passed the Streets and Bridges bond back in 2010, and our streets and bridges are in better shape than comparable communities around the state. And transportation is important for businesses. You have to be able to get things to and from the thoroughfares. In addition to that, a lot of redevelopment happening in our community. On South Commercial, I can think of a couple of new kind of strip mall ideas, but they're 100% occupied just like that. Downtown, we have the South Block of the, what used to be the Boise Cascade site, but redeveloped by Mountain West Investments. That has been, it's beautiful and it's full. And there's another phase to that they moved ahead about another year and a half. They're already starting construction a year and a half ahead of where they thought they were going to be, because their tenant projections were too conservative. And I mean, that place filled up as soon as they were available. And so we take a look at some of the decisions like that, whether or not these projects can move forward like that. You have to have a business-friendly city council that's okay with growth, and we have that, and we're fortunate in Salem. We've had that for about the last 13, 14 years, and it takes, the pendulum in Salem kind of swung a very, very significant, kind of in the wrong direction there for a while, and it's starting to come back. And so we have gone through and we have made endorsements for mayor and councilors in wards 1 and 7, and who we're vouching for and stand the test of economic improvement for our area are the current Ward 1 City Councilor, Chuck Bennett, who's running for mayor, and in Ward 1, the candidate that we've endorsed, his name is Jan Keilefeit. He's from Germany. He's lived in Salem for the last about 17 years. He's just a really bright young guy. And then in Ward 7, the incumbent is Warren Benars. And we're excited about these candidates. We're excited about the projects and their willingness to listen to the business community. It's nice to have, if the legislature won't necessarily put their ear to the business community and what's going on, it's nice to at least have a local city council. Our local Marion County Board of Commissioners is very, very in tune with us and with the members of our organization, and really strive to have relationships there. So in terms of locally, I feel, even though Oregon has the potential to be, not the potential, the climate for business in Oregon is going to be less than ideal as the years go forward.
So that's support from a city council as a whole and individually, councilors who really understand economic development. And that doesn't mean development haphazardly. It means a thriving community, a good economic base.
And there are a lot of pieces to that, as you well know.
Yes, it's very important. So
so
that's good.
We're really looking forward to being successful again, and having the candidates that we've endorsed be successful again.
Good.
So our website, salemchamber.org, we did have a questionnaire that we put out to the candidates, and so we've shared their responses there. Very insightful. Some things to look forward to in Salem. We have some property in Salem, a significant chunk that could go back to the private sector from being held by the state of Oregon. And that's always been an issue here, because we are the state's capital, we are the county seat. So much of our property is publicly held, meaning that it's exempt from taxation, which causes problems for the city and for the county, because that tax base to them isn't coming in for us to then be able to provide
Well, the infrastructure.
Well,
that,
yeah, public safety
yeah.
and roads and just all these different things. So you have to be a really pragmatic thinker to be an elected leader in this area. But we have about, about 75, 80 acres over off of Center Street, the north campus of the Oregon State Hospital. It is currently up for sale by the Department of Administrative Services. And it looks as though the most ideal setting there is some mixed use redevelopment, and that's going to be a combination of single family dwellings, multifamily dwellings, and then some commercial space as well, some retail space to support those extra people in there. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a good problem to have. What do we do with these 78 acres in the middle of Salem? So there are some really fantastic things that are happening here locally. We can't take our eye off the ball. We fought really hard on that minimum wage thing, but it didn't go our way. Okay.
Got to make it work somehow.
Yeah, lead by example and
Yes.
figure out, all right, so what's the next step? What's the next leadership opportunity to do the best thing, not only for businesses, but for the people that live here and call this place home?
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic news on that property. Finally, it's been talked about for a long time.
It has been.
Now that
Yeah.
it's actually going to be for sale.
Yeah.
So another huge issue facing businesses is this IP 28. So let's touch on that for a minute here, and what's the prevailing thought on that, and information that the viewers here really ought to have and know more about that, because very often voters will get just a little bit of information, but not in context of what the measure is really all about.
Yeah. And so Initiative IP 28, Initiative Petition 28, it is a ballot measure that will appear on the ballots in November. And it's been put on there by Our Oregon, which is it's a collective of labor unions, and it's kind of like the union of the unions. And they're signature gathering currently, and I got to tell you, they will have the signatures, and they'll probably have the signatures in really short order. If you take a look at the initiative process in Oregon, you come out with a ballot title, which is the first thing that most people read.
Yeah.
And this ballot title promises everything except for unicorns and glitter. I mean, they're saying that this will solve our problems with the services that are provided to our state senior population, and it'll solve the problems with our schools. Essentially, is the claim that's being made. The catch is that when you read down this, these dollars that would be collected by this tax, and it would be the most significant tax increase in Oregon's history,
Ever in the
ever
history.
in the history of Oregon ever. All of those dollars flow directly into the general fund for the budget of the state of Oregon. So there's no guarantee that it goes to schools or senior services.
Right.
The funds are not earmarked at all. They just flow directly into the general fund. It would be a $5 billion tax on businesses and about the top 1,000 businesses within the state of Oregon. Now, the top, and let me define by top 1,000, that's an approximate number. If a business has $25 million or more in gross receipts, they are taxed at a rate of 2.5% on the gross receipts plus $30,000. So as soon as they cross that $25 million and $1 threshold, then they immediately are hit with a tax bill of about $800,000.
Wow.
So the problem with this is that a lot of these businesses are low profit margin businesses, and this is not a tax on the profits.
Right.
This is a tax on the gross receipts. You have a lot of businesses that are successful, that are viewed as being very successful, but that don't have a 2.5% profit margin.
Right.
So if all of a sudden all of their profit is going to taxes, why be in business anymore? You might as well just you might as well just close up shop. And these are our most significant businesses in the state. So, and then what that means to us as consumers is these are 1,000 businesses. So the first place that our kind of our thinking goes is, well, you know, I just won't do business with this one. I'll do business with this one over here because they're, you know, they're smaller. Well, this is a kind of a pyramid of a tax, and it affects every layer of the supply chain.
Right.
So even though the restaurant that you go to, they, you know, they're not over $25 million in sales, but the provider where they get a lot of their food is, and their packaging and all of these different things, and all of these taxes are compounded on every item, 2.5% time over time over time. So it's a very regressive tax in the sense that it takes money, a great deal of money out of our economy, and just gives it right back to the state with no real accountability. It doesn't sunset. There's no direction as far as where this is going to go. So it's very scary. There's a campaign firm that has been hired by a coalition of Oregon business groups and businesses alike that has come together and hired a firm called Winter Mondebach. And Winter Mondebach is very successful in defeating just job-crushing taxes like this in states all around the country. So we feel good about the team and the coalition that's around this. The Salem Area Chamber of Commerce is a member of it, as is the Kaiser Chamber, Associated Oregon Industries. The list goes on and on and on. So there's going to be very good support around the opposition, but you do need to look a layer further than just that pretty ballot measure title that promises, you know, rainbows and sunshine from here on out, and it doesn't cost you anything.
To me, it amounts again to it's deceptive, which so many of these efforts are. Like you say, promising everything to everybody, especially seniors and schools, and yet the money going into the general fund. And if we continue with this one-party rule, you know exactly where that money is going, and once it goes into the general fund and it gets filtered wherever special interests want it to go, not where it's best going to benefit Oregonians at large. It's going to be like money down a black hole, and putting businesses out of business. Because, like I say, and I want to reemphasize to the viewers here, this tax, and although 2.5% may not sound like a lot when you have gross receipts of more than $25 million, but as you've already pointed out, Nick, gross receipts have nothing to do with profits.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting thing. We had at our January public policy session, which is where the policy efforts of the Salem Area Chamber of Commerce are that's kind of the grassroots level for us. We had Ben Unger, who's the executive director of our Oregon, and we had Allison Hart, who's the executive director of the Oregon State Chambers. So our Oregon proponents of the measure and the Oregon State Chamber representing the opposition to the measure. It was brought up actually by a member of the audience, Laura Moret, who's seeking election in House District 20, and she and her husband own a construction company, and what she said was she asked Ben Unger, why gross receipts? Why not a tax on the profits? And he said, well, they're the same thing.
Oh my goodness!
And now. So just that lack of understanding that exists, that that's what is most disturbing to me, is that they're taxing something, they're collecting signatures, yet the catalyst, the leader of the group that is doing this doesn't even know the difference between gross receipts and profits.
doesn't know the difference, or or maybe, again, this is a very deceptive effort.
It is.
And, but nonetheless, to not be explaining it or know how to explain it, he should not be the spokesperson for this effort, because, again, people are going to have totally a misconceived idea or misunderstanding, or however you want to describe it. And it is going to be absolutely devastating to these businesses that, as you've already pointed out, function on just because of the nature of the business they're in. It's a low margin that they have to work with, just because of the nature of food industry is a great one to use as an example. It's going to affect our farmers, our ag industry. And as you pointed out, it'll affect, you go out to dinner, you go to the grocery store, get ready for higher prices. But it doesn't mean that these businesses who will have to pay this gross receipt tax are going to be doing better. They're going to be doing worse, most likely. It'll be much, much more difficult for them to remain in business. So I guess all we can do is tell people, please read the fine print and go to the Salem Chamber, talk to Nick, get involved in the Chamber and learn more about this horrible, horrible initiative petition that is not being explained very well, either misunderstood or knowingly going after gross receipts, which is just practically inconceivable that an effort to help Oregonians would be so not thought out very well. Well,
and it's, I would say that there's a tremendous amount of information that's out there, and even if you're not a member of the Salem Chamber, we take a lot of pride in communicating at a very high level what the local business owners' thoughts are on issues that are going to have whether a positive or a negative impact on things that are coming our way as voters. So if you go to our website, salemchamber.org, and you click on the advocacy tab at the top of that, we have a public policy blog within there. Today we put up 2 articles, one about the city council candidates that I mentioned earlier, another article about the police facility that voters are going to be voting on a bond for this November, more than likely. And then finally, there is I think tomorrow we'll have up a lot of information and some good resources on IP28. So please use us as your resource for some of these things that we've talked about to this point today.
Good, and thank you so much for the work you do. These issues are getting so much more complicated, and it's great that the Chamber is actively involved in it and getting information out there. So thank you for coming. And any other final comment before we close?
Well, I would just say pay very close attention to the future of policing in Salem and this future police facility. It is absolutely important for us to protect our officers, and we're going to have the opportunity to do that this November.
Good. So thank you again. Nick Williams, the Director of Public Affairs at the Salem Chamber of Commerce, and we will talk again with you in the near future.
Okay. Thank you, Patty.